Welcome to Crash Course in Commercial Real Estate. We converted our in-house training program to a podcast to teach you prospecting, negotiation, business planning, and other fundamental skills to become a successful commercial real estate agent. And now, here's your host, Brady Collier.
Welcome back. I'm here with Kyle Cowan and with Shannon Powell, and we are training Shannon in how to sell and lease commercial real estate. And so today's topic that we're going to take up is, when do you call somebody, when do you email somebody, and when do you text them? Is there any other means of communication that I'm not thinking about?
Yeah, the telegram.
Yeah, the telegram, the passenger pigeon.
Fax.
Snapchat.
Fax.
Okay. And so the reason for this is because I started in the real estate business back in the early 2000s. And I still remember when I sent my first text message, because I got a smartphone. It was a BlackBerry. And this kid was telling me how cool it was to text people. And I was like, why would I ever do that when I could just call them? And so I just couldn't be convinced that now how many texts do I send every single day? But then I deal with clients a lot of the clients in commercial real estate are people who've made tremendous amount of money, and they're up there in years. What is their preferred way to communicate? And I say it's different with every person. So I want to talk, Shannon, just a little bit about how to discern the moments when it's best to send a text, when it's best to send an email, and when it's best to just pick up the phone and call. And I don't want to get into prospecting, because we have our next two videos are going to be on prospecting, and we're going to talk about face-to-face versus phone. Oh, that's another medium that I didn't mean, is face-to-face communication. Yeah. I have one thing that's going wrong in a deal right now, and it's going wrong to the degree that I didn't feel comfortable sending an email or calling. I need to go to the client's office and meet with them face-to-face. So I'll throw that one in there as well. So let's start with when is it appropriate? Let's talk about generations. Let's talk about when is it. Let's contrast two of these just for expediency. When is it appropriate to text versus send an email, Kyle?
Well, again, you alluded to the fact of how it's evolved, and I think it's even evolved in the 5 or 6 years since I've been in the business, where text is becoming so normalized that I will get text messages before I get an email. But generally speaking, before you have a relationship with somebody as a broker that's trying to portray professionalism, I think you call and you email.
You call first, develop the relationship, and maybe now post-pandemic that's Zoom, but it's probably just a telephone call is enough to call, and you warm up the whole situation. And then you follow up with an email, and then as it becomes more relational, you progress into text.
Right.
Okay.
But it's gotten to where now I'll get a text message as a response to a voicemail, or in lieu of a voicemail, someone will call me, and instead of leaving a voicemail, they just shoot a text message, which I've learned to appreciate because, we've talked about this on other episodes. Commodities are only time, and a text message is so fast. I'm in meetings all the time or touring with people, and it might take me till the end of the day to listen to a voicemail, but I'll read a text message immediately. Not while driving, of course.
Of course,
yeah.
Never text and drive. So Shannon, talk about your personal communication outside of real estate and break it down by generation. People at your church, people at the school you used to work at, whatever it may be. How do you decide when to text or when to call just people in general, not family members, not close personal relationships? How do you discern that in your life?
I think it's the nature of what we're talking about. So if it's just a, hey, how are you? A text would be fine. But if it's something more serious, I want to hear how they're doing, or just something that entails deeper conversation, then I think that means a phone call or a face-to-face.
How about age groups? Are there generations or age brackets where you feel more comfortable calling, emailing, or texting?
Actually, one mode that we really didn't talk about either was a handwritten note. And I have found that with older generation, that is very meaningful to people. And actually just received that the other day from a gentleman in Dallas. And it was someone that we spoke to at Retail Live, and I received a letter from him. Well, that day, a pad site came online, and we were interested. And so I just called him, and I said, first of all, I got your note. Thank you for taking the time. And that warmed him up so much that I even like that he sent the note. And he's an older gentleman. And so it reminded me that day, too, to write people letters. Handwritten notes.
You were joking about the telegram? She's serious.
Yeah, there you go. Pony Express.
Yeah. I think that's true, and I think you have to be pretty discerning generationally. I've got clients that are as old as what's the oldest client that you've worked with in the last year?
80s,
Yeah.
late 80s probably.
Late 80s, and do they feel comfortable texting?
They have texted me, yes. Now, comfortable, I don't know. They also, instead of scanning something and sending it, they printed it, marked it up, and mailed it. So, but yeah.
That's pretty old school.
Yeah.
I normally look at them and say, when I decide to text somebody, is normally I let them initiate the text first. So that's my rule, and maybe that's too old-fashioned. But if somebody's never texted me, I don't text them. If they keep it email and phone call, I keep it email and phone call. And whenever they move it into a text message, hey, got your voicemail, call you back later, all of a sudden they've opened the gates, and then I can text.
That's probably your rule for clients.
Yes.
Would that be your rule for other brokers or, other vendors within the business?
That's a good question. And I basically treat clients as though I want their business and vendors as though they want my business. And so with a vendor, I do what's most convenient for me. And oftentimes that's a text message. So you make a great point.
Yeah.
But with clients, I'm respecting them and letting them. Because if they're a client and they don't want my text messages blowing up their phone, if they handle all of their business via email at their desk or whatever, then I don't want to take it there and then them shut it down, because I think that's
What about
embarrassing.
another broker that you're either negotiating with or you need answers from?
It's going to depend for me on his age. It's a great question.
Yeah.
If he's an old school broker, I had a broker the other day that we were negotiating a deal. A deal started to fall apart. It was an old school broker, and he called me and he says, hey, I'd like to stop by your office and talk to you. And first of all, I knew it was really serious because he was coming to my office, and he's an old school broker. But that guy, he and I've probably only texted a handful of times in the last 10 years because he's over 60 years old, and we just don't text that much. But if it was somebody of your generation, I'd just lead with a text. And so I'm Gen X, he's a millennial. And so on every millennial, I feel pretty comfortable texting any millennial, knowing they prefer to text as opposed to see me face to face. They would choose to never see another human face to face if they could. They would just live life through a text message. So if it's a millennial, I feel comfortable moving it to texting pretty early on.
And this does drift into prospecting a little bit or negotiation, because all this communication you might be doing in prospecting, you might be doing in negotiation, you might be doing just for relational growth but when I'm negotiating with somebody, I need something, or I'm trying to push a deal forward and I need something, I'm probably the one that moves it to text more quickly. And it depends on where. Are you in the position of power in negotiation? Are you in need of that relationship? Or are they in need of your client and what you're looking to accomplish with that relationship? But
I audaciously moved a deal towards text the other day because I couldn't get it done. I called a person, I left a voicemail, I emailed them, and I hadn't heard back. And I thought, I've got the guy's cell phone number, and he was the head of real estate for a regional organization worth over $1 billion. It's a big organization. And I had tried calling, I had tried emailing, I didn't get a response. I had his cell phone because somebody in his organization had given it to me. I said, hey, so-and-so, I'd like to talk to you about such and such deal point. Would you please give me a buzz back? And he did not respond to my text. Somebody in his organization called me and said, here's how we'd like to move the negotiation, da-da-da-da-da. So he didn't even respond to my text because he was...
But it worked. Accomplished what you wanted.
Yeah, but I could tell if he wanted me to text, me, he would have said, hey, why don't you call so-and-so? I'm not going to take care of that personally.
Right.
But he didn't text me back. So I crossed into text land, and I got shut down. I was basically told, don't do that. But he's also not even not a millennial.
And
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and this may move into prospecting, but I've been thinking through this with reaching out to people. Do you know certain modes that have more success in getting a deal going? Is there one way of communicating versus another that gets it going more successfully?
Yeah, I think that has to do with attention to the deal. Like if I'm taking a face-to-face meeting, it's saying that deal has a certain level of importance because I'm blocking time on my calendar. I don't block time on my calendar to respond to somebody's text message. It's like 2 seconds while I'm in a meeting just to da-da-da. It's real fast. So that text message is the least committal. A face-to-face appointment is the most committal. And an email is in the middle, and then a phone call is here. So if I want to get commitment, if I want a very personal touch, I personally tend towards the phone call or the face-to-face. And it's not practical. We're going to get into prospecting face-to-face versus phone calls in the next time that we talk. And it's not practical to go see people every time you're prospecting or to handle every deal point via a phone call. So some of it's going to be, but one thing about email is there's documentation. A benefit to email communication is there's documentation of what was discussed and their responses to it. So especially if I don't know somebody well and I'm asking them a question, I can copy somebody, I can send them an email, and when that response comes back, I have a documented response. Whereas a phone call, and I guess you have that in a text, but it's not as common because you can always sit.
It's hard to search and find.
It's just way on business points, especially negotiation and all that. If it's all in email, it's all in a file, it's all in one spot. It's super convenient.
Yeah, and you brought up something that could be an episode of its own, but when to copy people on emails and who to copy and
when to blind carbon copy, and
yeah,
when to never reply to all if you're blind carbon copied.
Yeah. And so for sure that's something to discern and think through. But I think with all of this, we really haven't given any hard and fast rules. Generally speaking, I know you say you let them move to text first, but you wouldn't say universally that's the case. And so to zoom out on this topic, and I think it was you when we were talking about what characteristic makes a successful real estate broker. I don't know if you said personal discernment or relational discernment or tact or exactly how you phrased it, but that's really what this comes down to, is the ability to look at a relationship, what your goal is with it, what means of communication they're going to prefer, and then make that decision. And so I would say whether it's a call, face-to-face, email, text, you're doing it with a purpose. You're thinking through which one you're going to use, and you have a reason for doing it. You're not being flippant with any of your communication. Because if you're wasting somebody's time, if you're following up too persistently, especially in prospecting, and you're not providing value to them, they're just going to stop responding to you, and you're not going to move the relationship forward.
I mean, to that point, Kyle, so as you know, we develop shopping centers and triple net investments like single tenant assets, and then we take them to the market. And so the brokers that call on me are a lot of guys out of California, or around the country, I guess, that want to take those, say it's a Starbucks, a single tenant Starbucks that we developed or whatever it may be. They want to take that listing out to the market. Kyle, if any of those guys, if I had never had a phone call or a conversation and one of those triple net brokers sent me a text because he wanted to list my product, I would not call that guy back in a million years.
What if
I wouldn't call him back in a million years?
And just to challenge it, what if the text message said, saw your listing of the Crunch Fitness at 7.2% cap rate. I recently sold one at 6.25%. I think you're underpriced. Call me to discuss. You wouldn't call that back if it was that type of text message? And so just zooming out, are they providing value with what they're sending? I agree with you generally speaking. Hey, give me a call about working together.
Yeah,
of course not.
All of those net lease brokers, they're all in their 20s. They're all ambitious. I love it. They're prospecting heavy. Some of them leave me great voicemails. I save them to where I can play them for you. This dude left a great. This was a very compelling voicemail. I actually considered calling the guy back. It was so compelling. So I save those things. But if any of them reach out to me via text, like if it was that text, maybe I would call him back. No, maybe I would call him back. But if any of those guys text me with I don't already know that, if I don't already have them in my phone, they should not be texting me. Email me, call me, or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a text message today in response to a call I made of a number I didn't have saved, and I had no idea.
Spam. You thought it was spam.
No, it's just like, in a meeting, can I call you back? Or no, it wasn't that, because then I would have known. It was something like, hey, I'm traveling. Can we circle up next week?
And you said, sure, call me, because I don't know you.
I'm like, yeah. I had to Google.
So I would say if you don't already have a relationship, first of all, you can lead with an introductory email, but I get so many of those prospecting emails every day who want to do my IT and they want to do my this, and vendors who want our business and brokers and whatever. And I just wholesale delete those. Matter of fact, a lot of times I have somebody else go in and delete all of those prospecting emails. When people call me on my cell phone, I'll take their call. If they leave me a great voicemail on my phone, I'll call them back. So I prefer that the first point of prospecting be a phone call, a follow-up email, and then move to text once there's a relationship. If I save your number in my phone, then you can text me. But you don't know that until I say, hey, Shannon, on a call. I'll call you back in a little while. Boom. I opened it up. Now we can begin this text message thing. Sounds great. Call you in 5. And that's really what text is good for, is like little bitty quick. Okay, sounds good. Da-da-da. When people send me text messages that I have to scroll to read, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this person has too much time on their hands.
Well, you've heard the voicemails or the message answering machines that now say, for a quicker response, please shoot me a text message. Like people are, I think, trying to move away from voicemail because we're in meetings, we're running around, and it's harder to track. Even to the extent where your phone now converts your voicemail to a text.
I get it, but which one is warmer? To see Shannon's face, that's warmer. To hear her voice, that's warmer. But to get a text from her, that's completely relationally neutral. It's not warm. Maybe it's not cold. That depends on the language you use. But if I see her face, if I hear her voice, she's a human being. She has emotion. She's real, so on and so forth. If I just get a text or an email from her, that's just so cold and indifferent.
And that's where it gets down to relationship, right? What you're trying to accomplish.
And let me just say, a lot of real estate brokers are not successful because they're scared to death to pick up the phone. They just hate to pick up the phone. It's so much more non-committal. It's so much lower conflict. It's so much less, it's just so much easier sometimes to send a text. Do the hard thing. Pick up a phone, especially whenever you're talking to people older than me. I'm 41 years old. So if you're talking to somebody Gen X, baby boomers, you're not going to be talking to many real estate people that are the great generation. But if you're dealing with Gen X and baby boomers, call them. If you're dealing with millennials, just shoot those kids a text.
Yeah, and you mentioned a second ago, about brokers, and I've had limited experience, but the broker I did talk to, I called him and I just asked him, well, what's the best way to reach you? What do you prefer? And he told me, he said, call me. That's how I like to talk. And every time I've called him, he's picked up the phone. So I think it's easy just to ask them right away how they prefer it. And then that's how you proceed.
I worked with a super successful broker when I was selling apartments. He was office and retail. And at the end of every day, he would sit down and write down every one of his voicemails. He'd start the next day by calling those people back. And he would respond to all of his emails that he would time block. And he set aside 3 to 6 every day to respond to emails and respond to voicemails. And he just had this system. And if you didn't fit within his system, if you text him in the middle of the day or whatever, he gets lost in text land. And so I think that's really cool. I mean, a really great thought is ask people their preference and do it their way. Any closing thoughts?
No, that's it.
Yeah. Any closing questions?
Yeah.
So much more. We could dialogue all day long about this, especially with the generational aspect to it. But we'll close it out right there. When to text, when to email, and when to pick up the phone and call somebody, and then when to go see them face to face. And so our next one will be on prospecting, and we'll get into probably some of each one of those things in your prospecting process as well. We'll have several videos just on the prospecting process. Really looking forward to it. Thanks.